Okay, so today the title of our lesson is How to Conduct a Writing Conference. Our learning goals are to ask your writers 3 meaningful questions on what are they working on, what are they trying to do, and what will they do today. The second goal is to manage a small group of 2 to 4 students in a writing conference and ensure that each student provides 1 meaningful response during the discussion. Before we got started, I gave the students 10 minutes to complete a writing prompt on comparing and contrasting cats to dogs. And now we're going to get started on conducting the actual conference and how to ensure that both goals are met. Okay, so can each student trade a paper, clockwise? Okay, you're going to be given 2 minutes to read the response and be ready to provide 1 positive and 1 negative to your peer's paper when you are finished. As the students read their paper, we're going to want to make sure that at the end of this conference we complete our writing conference feedback form. And what this does is it gives the student's name, the date, the title of the lesson, some observation and notes, and some next steps that the student can use for next week's prompt and ensure that they are meeting the goals or meeting the critiques that were given to them by their peers. You're going to want to make sure that you have this separated up so that they can have multiple lessons on the same sheet. That way they can see the progression of their writing over time. As they critique the papers, it's really important to make sure that they do not correct spelling or punctuation. The goal to start out in the first lessons are to make sure that the students are aware of how well they're using transition words, how well they are addressing the prompt, using their nouns, verbs, etc. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first student is Cassidy. She's here to my right. So who has Cassidy's paper?
I do.
Okay, so can we go ahead and get started? And can you give Cassidy 1 positive?
1 positive would be finding that you found so many similarities between cats and dogs, and 1 critique would be that when comparing or contrasting cats to dogs, that there were only differences cats had. She didn't name any differences that the dog had from a cat.
Okay, great. And what are some next steps that you would provide for Cassidy to ensure that next week she's addressing the prompt and making sure she hits all points?
I would say instead of trying to get so much fit in to 1 writing prompt, maybe glaze over a couple of the bigger differences or similarities.
Okay, so am I hearing you right? You're saying be more descriptive on just a few similarities and differences versus
Yes.
cramming a bunch. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Good job. Okay, and next student is Jessie. Who has Jessie's paper?
I did.
Okay, Cassidy.
Want me to give the good and the bad?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll get started with a positive.
Okay. I said a positive would be that she's very informative. She goes into good detail about her similarities and her differences.
Okay. And what's 1 critique?
While giving a lot of information, she actually just told us differences. She gave similarities, but she said the differences were. So you never see in the paper that she's using similarities actually. It says the differences are, and then she gives similarities.
Gotcha. Okay. So what would be some next steps that you would provide for Jessie to make sure that next week she touches on all aspects of the prompt and her work just gets better over time?
I would just say to really kind of think about what you're wanting to say and just make sure that you use it in the right verbiage, the right way.
Okay. So am I hearing it right? For next week, you would like to see Jessie just maybe take it slower
Yeah.
and provide detail
Mhm.
versus trying to write a whole bunch at once.
Yes.
I think that's kind of a common theme, which unfortunately is kind of a product of doing a quick prompt in 10 minutes. But it's nice to hear that instead of doing quantity, we want to do quality.
Right.
Okay. So, Jesse, whose paper do you have?
I have Cody's.
Okay, so last but not least, what's one positive from Cody's paper?
He stayed on task and provided for both cats and dogs a lot of similarities and a lot of differences.
Okay, good job. And what's one critique?
His punctuation was a little off.
Okay, okay. So, we can work on that. And what is the next steps that you would provide for Cody to ensure that he next week touches on the prompt and his writing gets better over time?
His prompt writing was good, but as far as just proofreading and editing would be more of what he would work on.
Okay, again, that's probably a product of doing a quick prompt.
Right.
Okay, so if I'm hearing everybody correct, we want to make sure that we are taking our time. We're doing our pre-work to make sure we have just a few details that we know ahead of time that we can touch on and we can provide a lot of detail for. Just something fun, what's the strangest thing that your person put in their paper? Is a similarity or difference? Just pick one that was just strange or just stuck out to you.
I'll go ahead. Cassidy put that both cats and dogs are able to breastfeed.
Okay, so that's a similarity.
It is.
That's great, that's
It is
great.
a similarity, you're right, it's just funny to me.
Okay, great. Cassidy? Jesse, anybody?
Cody provided that they both have paws.
Okay, good job, good job, that's a good observation.
Jesse put that cats are loners. So
Okay.
they are, but they just funny loners.
So, with the spirit of making sure we provide good feedback and knowing that there were a lot of great similarities and differences, but not so much detail, can you tell me maybe did she elaborate on how they are loners, or did she just say that they are loners?
She just said that they kind of do their own thing and they just want attention when they feel like they want it.
Very true. Okay, great. So that's a good example of where you provide a good example. Okay, so as we finish up with this writing conference, I'm going to make sure that each student gets their format, their worksheet back with the listed positive and negative and next steps. And then next week we will, before we start our writing prompts, we're going to hand out everybody's form, their worksheet, so that you know what the positive and what the critique was and what next steps were before you start next week's assignment. And then as we get our writing conference put together, we're going to want to make sure we bring those worksheets. It's really important to make sure you document every detail of the writing conference, or else the student may forget from week to week what they've reviewed, what their next steps are, what they're trying to do. Again, one of the goals is to make sure that we touch on what are they working on, which today was the compare and contrast cats and dogs. What are they trying to do? Again, they're trying to compare and contrast, but next week we're going to try and go into more detail. And what will they do today? And today they're going to have conviction. They're going to make sure they go into that detail, or that they provide fewer similarities or differences, or whatever the prompt asks them to do. So they're going to know that today they're going to try and go for quality over quantity. Okay, so thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.